సికింద్రాబాద్ తార్నాకలోని ఐఐసిటిలో యువ శాస్త్రవేత్తలకు అవార్డుల ప్రధానోత్సవం కార్యక్రమంలో మంత్రి కేటీఆర్ మాట్లాడుతున్నారు. ప్రత్యక్ష ప్రసారం ద్వారా చూద్దాం.
Working on that, and we continue to work on that. We are working on Musi beautification and Musi cleaning and liquid waste management in the city of Hyderabad. And we are consistently making efforts to ramp up our urban infrastructure. But I think these three areas, like I said, irrigation, possibly a subcommittee, and guiding us with what kind of crop colonies can come up. Because monocropping will destroy soil fertility, as we all know. And monocropping, of course, is detrimental even in terms of the farmers getting a fair price in the market. So therefore, a possible subcommittee on that, and a second possible subcommittee on how to sensitize people on the good consequences, the positive consequences of industrialization, employment, and how can we even tackle the pollution hazards that have happened in the past. Because a lot of things are fresh in the minds of people. You know, the Bhopal tragedy, the unfortunate tragedies even inside or close to the city of Hyderabad, and also consequences of urbanization. If Professor Narasimha Reddy can guide the government on these three fronts, I'll be grateful. Now, like many of you, I also very strongly believe science and innovation are the primary drivers of long-run economic growth. Because most of the industry, most of the enterprises that have come about in the world today have come out from some premier scientific labs, have come out from some brilliant minds. Now, the only way for sustained employment provision is by way of encouraging the private sector, by way of encouraging innovation, by way of encouraging more and more enterprise and free market economy. Now that's something government of Telangana has been doing, championing in fact, consistently. That's why we are ranked number 1 on the Ease of Doing Business Index, which is a joint ranking, which is a ranking given by both DIPP and also the World Bank jointly together. We are delighted that we've been consistently maintaining that position. But at the same time, I think what's equally important to realize, in fact, when we were sitting up in the director's room and chatting, he said something very nonchalantly, which I latched onto and which I teased him about also. He said, we've published a lot of papers in many, many journals, which people hardly bother to read. My request to all the scientists in this room is, I possibly could have ended up and, joined one of you if I had gone on after my post-graduation to pursue a PhD. But my question to all of you, and at least some of you, is most of the science, most of the research that happens in our country, unfortunately remains either in beautiful and wonderful publications, the science journals across the world and across India as well, or is confined to the wonderful institutions that we so proudly cherish. See, CCMB, for example, or IICT, or some of the other wonderful names, in fact, in our own state, NGRI, like I said, NIN, CFTRI, ICRISAT, IDPL, etc., etc. All of these are truly eminent institutions which have really, really provided this country and the world great deal of inputs and great deal of amazing interventions with respect to science. But how much of it is actually known by the common man? How much of this research that happens in these eminent scientific institutions has had a commercial application? In a country like India, the reason why I say this is because in a country like India, unfortunately, science and scientific research still has a very elitist image. You might not like what I said. You may not be happy with what I'm saying. The fact is, the scientific research in this country, in our country, still has a tag which is extremely elitist and which is not identified by the common man of India. I'm not saying I'm talking as a common man, as a citizen here. I'm not saying we don't cherish your achievements. We do. When ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, sends 100 satellites in one go, we all take absolute pride. While we don't know what these 100 satellites are going to do, we all take great deal of pride and we derive a great deal of pleasure that India is also making significant advancements in science and technology, in space technology. I'm sure whenever one of our scientists wins one of the big awards, we all take a great deal of pride and our chest swells with pride, but we really don't know what you won it for. The point I'm trying to make is, a country like India needs homegrown recipes with the kind of problems we have. A country like India needs you to focus on the problems at the ground level. When I was at DRDO and RCI last year, they told me something which was extremely heartening. They said for our soldiers who are working in Siachen to protect our country, to protect our homeland, we've been able to come out and discover a bacteria which helps, which helps them handle their sanitation better in such adverse conditions. So that is in my head, in my mind, as a layman, as an absolute layman, as a citizen of this country. That is science that is going to help my country, that is going to help me get some things done in the right manner. My appeal to all of you, see, we have certain challenges. For example, healthcare. Healthcare in India, in fact, not just in India, but also across the world. I've lived in the US for about 8 years. It's one of the most hotly debated subjects. I keep getting a lot of requests in social media. I'm very active in social media. I keep getting a lot of requests in social media asking for assistance, financial assistance, to provide quality healthcare through a private sector hospital. Now, a lot of times, my mind keeps darting back to the same question. We have Arogyashri, which you all know, a universal health coverage, which covers nearly 1,000 different kind of ailments. If you have a white ration card, which is for anybody who's below the poverty line, which I'm presuming none of you in this room have, we provide, Arogyashri coverage. But in spite of that, in spite of now Government of India talking about a scheme called Ayushman Bhava, a medical coverage, the Medicare in this country, the healthcare, is quite expensive for a common man, for an ordinary middle-class man in this country. Now, if you ask me, our brilliant minds, our brilliant scientific minds with their scientific temperament should possibly work on lowering the healthcare costs in India. Medical devices that we import. More than 70% of the med devices that are deployed in the corporate hospitals or even government hospitals in India today are imported from abroad. Now, why can't we work on solutions? Why can't we work on indigenous solutions which substantially will lower the cost of healthcare? So my request, again, without really offending any of your sensibilities, is that this elitist image of scientific institutions in India, because a lot of people do not know what goes inside the walls of IICT or CCMB. I would go to the extent of saying 95% of Hyderabad does not know what goes on inside. I know you throw open your doors every so often to the young children, to the children from schools, so that they can come experience, and I'm sure Telangana Academy of Sciences also is publishing journals in vernacular, so that dissemination of science is happening even at a primary school and upper primary school level. All of this is good work. But I think at somewhere, if we can break that mental barrier, that science and scientific research in this country is not catering to the needs of the common man of this country, I think you would have really given this country a great deal of hope, and you would have also taken that leap of faith, which I think is much, much needed at this point in time, for our generation at least, because a lot of us who have grown up and who are looking at this country and who travel the world as well, typically end up lamenting all the time about countries like Japan, which have progressed by leaps and bounds in the last few decades, even after an explosion of a nuclear weapon on their soil, on their land. They have been able to catapult themselves into the top league, in spite of the natural handicap, in spite of not having natural resources, in spite of not having any natural resources. In fact, let me put it that way. Countries like South Korea have done exceptionally well and are one of the top economies in the world. In spite of their limitations with respect to size, in spite of their, countries in Europe have done well. In spite of their limitations with respect to language, China has done exceptionally well. So India, with all the ingredients of greatness, India with all of its amazing abilities to be able to break into the big league and to be able to actually drive this world, unfortunately has not been able to get its basics right. We as a government are taking pride, the state government of Telangana, that we are going to be providing a portable drinking water connection to each and every home in the next 4 months. But in fact, if you ask me, it's a shame that a government has to talk about it proudly 70 years after independence. It should have been done possibly a few decades ago. Entire country, not just Telangana. After 70 years of independence, here's a government which says, I'm going to give a portable drinking water connection to each and every home, and we talk about it like an achievement. Whereas it is actually a basic necessity. Where have we missed the plot? Where have we failed our country? I mean, collective leaderships over the last few decades. On the one hand, we hear Union Energy Minister talking about how our country is going to produce 175 gigabits of solar energy, renewable energy. On the other hand, we also hear him talking about how our country is a surplus power country. But at the same time, we have to remind ourselves there are thousands of villages out there which are languishing without electrification. So we as a country, in fact, our Honorable Chief Minister yesterday also pointed out to something extremely important. 70,000 TMCs of water is available in our country today. The collective water in all the wonderful rivers that flow through the length and breadth of this country. Brahmaputra, Ganga, Godavari, Krishna, Narmada. 70,000 TMCs. Now, if you look at the complete water needs of this country in terms of irrigation, in terms of drinking water, in terms of industrialization, it will not exceed more than 40,000 TMCs. Even if you harness and even if you saturate and even if you leverage every single drop that is required for the consumption in this country, you'll still have 30,000 TMCs of surplus water. Oh, what a shame that this country still has famine-struck areas. What a shame that this country still has no drinking water in millions and millions of households. So there are a lot of things, which I am anguished about, like many of you, I'm pretty sure. But my request to you, having said all this, is to basically ensure, at least Telangana Academy of Sciences, to take up a few challenges, maybe. To take up a few. I'm not asking you to boil the ocean. I know what I've said possibly is information overload for many of you right now. But at the same time, I think Telangana Academy of Sciences can take it upon itself as a mandate and maybe start endeavoring towards at least solving 1, 2, or 3 problems and assist the government in its efforts to do more. We've launched our own effort called RICH, the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, exactly to alleviate the problem I've mentioned, exactly to overcome this hurdle of the elitist tag that scientific institutions have. We wanted to ensure that the research that happens in these scientific institutions happens in collaboration with the industry needs, because industry is directly linked to the market and market demand. So we wanted to ensure that a tie-up between industry and academia happens, and the scientific institutions happens, and again, comes out with some unique models for the rest of the country as well,